This video will look at the installation of Silk Central. Now there's two options which are available when you install Silk Central. The first option is, as part of the Silk Central installation, you're going to be able to automatically install MS SQL Express as your database repository. The benefit of this is, for the purpose of evaluation, it allows all the components that you need to be installed standalone on the machine, and SQL is installed and configured as part of the installation. The second option available is to use an existing data repository for your Silk Central database, such as SQL or Oracle. This video will look at installing and connecting to an existing data repository. The first thing to do is to install Silk Central, run your executable, which will then prepare the install and extract the necessary Silk Central files to your PC. Once the files are extracted, you'll be presented with the Install Shield wizard, and this will allow you step by step to walk through the installation. Once you select Next, you'll be presented with the option to choose the language which you wish to use for the Silk Central install. The choices are English, German, French, Japanese and Simplified Chinese. For the purpose of this installation, we'll be selecting English. At this stage also, you'll be able to open the release notes as well as open the install guide to gain further insight into the installation process. We're going to select Next and go through a standard install. You'll be able to then review the license agreement, review all the information relevant and accept the terms and conditions of the license agreement. Once you've done this, you'll then, if you have IIS installed in your environment, you'll be presented with a pop-up window saying that IIS is detected. Now, the default web service that's used with Silk Central is Tomcat Web Server. Select OK to this box and it will continue with the installation. If you don't have IIS, you will not see that window. Now, the Silk Central standard installation as a setup type will install with Tomcat Web Services. What you can do, however, is we can review the information under the Silk Central custom setup type to see the different components which will be installed. When we select Next to review the custom components, you'll see here there's a number of different elements that are installed. Now, a custom installation will also allow you to do a multi-server installation and split out the components. Now, it's at this point here, if you have got IIS, you'll see the option Use Microsoft Internet Information Services for a web server. It's not selected here as we're going to use the Tomcat Web Service. If you don't have IIS, you won't see that option. Now I'm going to select back and I'm going to now select the Silk Central standard install. What we'll see at the bottom is the destination path for the installation of Silk Central. Should I wish to change this location, I can select Browse and amend the location for install. Once I select Next, you'll have the option to review the installation options before progressing with the install. The installation will now start and you'll see updates on your screen as to the different components that are being installed. And this will keep you updated and informed as to the progress of the installation. The installation of Silk Central will take a number of minutes to complete, dependent on your environment. You'll see a progress bar updating you with the status. Once the installation has completed, you'll be presented with the licensing mode option. Now, for the purpose of evaluation, you'll select the evaluation license option, which will provide you with 45 days evaluation period. Now, if you did want to install a SQL Express, you'll see here the box that you'd be able to select. In this instance, it's grayed out because in my environment, I already have a SQL Server instance available. If I didn't, it would be available to me to select. We're going to install without SQL Server Express and we're going to connect to an existing database repository. In my case, it's going to be SQL. When I select Next, it will now complete the configuration of the software in your environment. As part of this, you'll see it starting the different services for Silk Central before moving to show the completion of install. At this point, you'll be able to learn how to configure Silk Central and open the release notes to again gain further insight. When you select Finish, this will then open up Welcome to Silk Central, and it will give you insight into some of the features and functionalities that are available to you. And at this point, you'll be able to see different tutorials available for you to access, as well as online resources such as the Borland.com webpage to give you an overview of the products, as well as having access to the Silk Central knowledge base and the Silk Central community forum. Close this down and we'll also see the Silk Central release note available, which again just gives you insights into the new features and capabilities. Now to start Silk Central, go to the Start menu, All Programs, and then we'll see an option called Silk. When we expand this option, we'll then see the Silk Central homepage, Administration Tools and Documentation. By selecting Silk Central homepage, at this point it will start up Silk Central within your web browser. Now, as we hadn't connected to a database repository, this is the point to configure this. The DBM host name will be your database server name. The DBMS type, you'll be able to select SQL or Oracle. In my case, I'm going to select SQL. The SQL port that I'm going to use is my standard 1433 port, and the database name here I'll be able to enter will be the database name which is created within my repository. The username and password entered on this screen is the database username and password and needs to have the relevant access to create a database. Once I select Connect Database, it will perform a number of system checks to check for the install of the database. I select OK, and it will then present me with Create New Database. This again is entering the database username and password. Now the installation of the database may take several minutes within your environment. One of the final steps is you'll be presented to create an ALM repository ID. This is an internal reference for Silk Central only. Typically, you would call this Silk Central Local if it's a local repository or the location of your database. Once you've selected OK to that, the install will finalise and you'll be presented with the Silk Central screen with the connection to the database set up. All that's left now is to log in with admin into Silk Central, ready to start the evaluation of Silk Central. At the top of the screen, you'll be able to see the URL which is used to access Silk Central, and you'll be presented with the Silk Central homepage. The Silk Central URL you'll be able to share with your colleagues to give access to Silk Central.